So you like Overwatch, but you also like Call of Duty. Nobody knows why, but you do, and you can't decide on a good way to spend your time. Lucky for you, Soldier 76 exists, and in today's video, we're gonna take an extremely in-depth look at him so you can master playing Call of Duty in Overwatch. We'll start off by covering Soldier 76's strengths. First, Soldier 76 arguably has the best main weapon in the game, being able to dish out damage at close, medium, and even sometimes long ranges. His biotic field makes him one of few non-support heroes that can heal himself and his teammates. His sprint gives him medium to high mobility, which is useful for returning to fights and escaping them. He is viable on both offense and defense. And finally, the biggest strength for Soldier 76, in my opinion, is the fact that he's not very ability reliant. Soldier 76 behaves very differently than heroes like Tracer, who really rely on their abilities to stay alive. Instead, Soldier 76 really only relies on his main weapon to deal damage, meaning he has minimal downtime and is almost always able to be in the fight. This is the point in the video where I'd normally talk about a hero's weaknesses, except with Soldier 76, I don't feel like he really has any worth mentioning. The only weaknesses Soldier 76 actually has are those you'd expect out of an assault hero. Things like low HP and a high skill cap apply to really all of the assault heroes in Overwatch, so there's not much to discuss about them. Now let's move on to Soldier 76's abilities, starting with his sprint. I'm not even going to put an infographic on screen for this one because his sprint is so straightforward. When you activate it, you move faster at the cost of not being able to shoot your weapon while you're doing this increased move speed. It's that simple. The only thing I can really say about it is if you're on PC, I recommend switching it from press to sprint to hold the sprint, because I much prefer holding the ability to sprint and letting go when I don't want to sprint as to pressing it once to start sprinting and pressing it again to stop. Now let's move on to Soldier 76's heavy pulse rifle. Soldier 76's main weapon sports 25 rounds in the magazine, fires at a rate of 10 rounds per second, each shot dealing between 5 and 17 damage depending on range. It takes 1 second to reload, and the damage is doubled on headshots. This weapon is fairly straightforward to use. At close ranges, and even sometimes medium ranges, depending on the size of your target, you should be spraying the weapon. Don't tap fire, don't burst fire, simply spray the weapon to deal your maximum damage at close and medium ranges. At medium to long ranges, I recommend burst firing. After 4 shots with the heavy pulse rifle, your bullets will start to spread and not go right in the center of your screen. Because of this, you should be firing in bursts of 4 or 3 at medium and long ranges. Another rule of thumb for this weapon is if you see enemies, you generally should be shooting at them. You have infinite ammo in Overwatch, so there's really no reason to not shoot at enemies when you see them. There are 2 small exceptions to this rule. The first is you can't shoot when you're sprinting, so don't try to do that. And the second is if you think you're going to need your bullets for a different target in a short period of time, maybe you're anticipating a flank or you know the enemy support is somewhere nearby and you want to save your bullets for them, don't waste your bullets then, because you don't want to be caught reloading right when someone comes up behind you or the enemy support exposes themselves. As far as picking your fights goes, determining whether or not you can actually win a 1v1, just keep in mind one rule. Try to fight all enemies within a distance that doesn't benefit them. For example, you should be fighting Widowmakers and Hanzos up close because you will destroy them there. You should be fighting Tracers and Reapers from far away because they won't even be able to damage you. Let's move on and talk about the alternate fire on Soldier 76's heavy pulse rifle, which are his Helix rockets. Soldier 76's Helix rockets act as one projectile and deal 120 damage when you hit someone with it. You deal 40 damage on direct impact and up to 80 splash damage, and that's how you get the 120. This means if you fire at a clump of enemies, you can be dealing 120 damage to one of them and 80 to all of the ones near them. The rockets fire in a straight line, have an 8-second cooldown, and their splash damage radius is 2 meters. They also can be used to rocket jump if you're into that, and they don't deal extra damage on headshots. Honestly, there's no bad target to use these on. You can use them on tanks to take out a decent portion of their health very quickly, or you can use them on squishy heroes like your Tracers or your Genjis to quickly execute them from full HP, because it'll deal about half of their health. For Tracer, it'll deal almost all of her health. When shooting these at tanks, I recommend going for the direct impact because they have a lot of health and that 40 extra damage can be beneficial. Also, most tanks are quite immobile and have large hitboxes, so you should be able to land the Helix rockets quite easily. When trying to use your Helix rockets on more mobile targets, like I just said, the Tracers and the Genjis, I recommend shooting them at the ground at their feet. You'll have a higher chance of actually hitting them, and you'll usually hit them for the 80 splash damage. Against Genji, you also have the added benefit of him not being able to deflect your Helix rockets because you shot them at the ground and not him. Helix rockets are especially useful against Bastion and Torbjorn turrets, as they're both very immobile. Torbjorn turrets you can 1v1 with ease. You simply place a biotic field round the corner, shoot your Helix rockets, and fire down range. You'll be able to take out the Torbjorn turret faster than he can actually heal it. Bastions, on the other hand, I recommend taking out with a teammate, or just dealing damage to them without ever fully engaging in a fight. This is because a Bastion will destroy you in a 1v1 if he's in sentry mode. Using your Helix rockets in conjunction with other teammates' abilities and weapons will allow you to take out Bastions much more easily. Now let's move on to Soldier 76's next ability, which is his Biotic Field. When deployed, the Biotic Field will heal allies within a 5-meter radius so long as they have line of sight of the Biotic emitter. The field lasts for 5 seconds and heals allies in it for 40 health per second. It is on a 15-second cooldown. The first thing you should do when using this ability is make sure you have allied health bars always turned on when you're playing Soldier 76. You can go into your settings, change it so your allies always show how much HP they have when you're playing Soldier 76. This makes it much easier to use your Biotic Field. When an ally is low on health, simply place your Biotic Field if a support is not around them, healing them. Now, this isn't the only time you should use your Biotic Field. In fact, this is probably the least likely scenario if you have a good support on your team. I like using my Biotic Field before or during fights, or obviously to recover if I almost just died. The key to using Biotic Field is not only when you use it, but also where you use it. Placement is key when using this ability. Place the Biotic Field in a location where you and allies can use it while being behind cover. It isn't very useful if it's out right in the middle of the open and enemies can shoot you while you're healing. You should put it around corners, in buildings, or behind the payload when you're pushing it. The only times I recommend throwing it out in the open are A, when you're about to die and you have to use this as a last-ditch effort to survive, or B, when your team is on the objective and you're in the middle of a team fight. When you're on the objective, your team is normally pretty clumped up, so the healing benefit you provide to your team for 5 seconds can often tip the scales in a team fight. Now let's talk about Soldier 76's most feared ability, that being his Tactical Visor. Upon activation, Soldier 76 reloads and gains automatic aiming for the next 6 seconds. For the duration of this ability, your reload time is reduced by 50%, and you can fire rockets at enemies. They will be automatically aimed. However, since rockets do have a travel time, they can be dodged. One thing to note before we talk about strategy for using Tactical Visor is that Soldier 76 does not aim at weak points. He will not aim at enemy heads. He aims kind of right at the center of their mass, so he'll deal regular body shot damage with each bullet. So how does one use Tactical Visor effectively? Well, there's a few things you should keep in mind. Whenever you use it, don't go full Rambo mode and assume you can 1v6 the entire enemy team, because you can't. You can't even take out all 6 enemies if they aren't paying attention. You simply don't deal enough damage. I normally don't recommend using this ability head on, because the enemies will immediately target you and try to take you out. If you do need to use it head-on, though, I recommend placing a Biotic Field first to increase your survivability. That being said, I would only recommend using this ability head-on, facing the enemies while they're facing you, when the enemy doesn't have any tanks to soak up all the damage. No Reinhardt shields, no Diva defense matrices, nothing like that. If you are faced with some enemies that have these abilities, and you most likely will, I recommend flanking before you use this ability. Come up behind enemies or maybe attack them from the side, that way you can maximize the damage you deal before they actually discover where you're shooting from. When you're shooting, I recommend trying to take out the enemy squishy heroes first. Start with supports, then move to assault heroes, then defense heroes, and then the tanks last. Tanks will soak up a lot of damage and will waste a lot of your ultimate, so I recommend not shooting them unless they're the only one you can shoot. Your bullets behave just like they would if you weren't using your ultimate. A hit scan weapon that can be blocked by any shields or barriers, so be sure to aim away from these if you see them. While it can be used by yourself, Tactical Visor is often used best with some certain friendly abilities. Zarya's Graviton Surge, Reinhardt's Earth Shatter, or Mei's Blizzard are the standard abilities for setting up other ultimates, and Tactical Visor is no exception. Before we move on to synergies and hero matchups, let's talk a little bit about Soldier 76's playstyle and some strategies for using him. Some people would argue that Soldier 76 has to be on the front lines and should be constantly dealing damage to all enemies. This is very false. Soldier 76 is powerful because of his extreme flexibility. Not only can he push, Soldier 76 can also be a flanker or a team player through the use of his biotic field. On offense, I recommend starting games on the front lines because he is admittedly a very good pusher. For this, he's great when paired with a Reinhardt or a D.Va because the use of their shields and their defense matrix allows Soldier 76 to dish out a lot of damage without taking much in return. If pushing on the front lines is ineffective and you can't break through the enemy defenses, I recommend trying to flank as Soldier 76. Once you're behind enemy lines, you should go for the high value targets on the enemy team. Taking out snipers shouldn't be too big of a problem if they don't see you coming because the use of your Helix rockets gives you very high burst damage, and you should be also taking out enemy supports. Zenyatta is super easy to kill as Soldier 76. A few headshots and you'll drop him instantly. Lucio and Mercy are a little tougher because they have a little more mobility, however they shouldn't be too big of a problem if you land your shots. Once you've taken out these high value targets, your team should have an easier time pushing and you can return to the fight with them. Now let's move on and talk about the hero matchups you'll encounter when playing Soldier 76. We'll start with the good ones. Heroes that you'd like to face as Soldier 76 include Pharah, Mercy, Zenyatta, Roadhog, Hanzo, Mei, Symmetra, and Tracer. Pharah is pretty easy to take out. She usually flies in a pretty predictable pattern, and your heavy pulse fire will make waste of her very quickly. Mercy has low HP, and you can usually take her out very quickly before she can escape to a teammate. Zenyatta has extremely low HP and extremely low mobility, making him an extremely easy target for you to take out. Roadhog is big and slow. You shouldn't have any problem landing your shots on him, and if you stay just outside of the range of his hook, there's nothing he can even do to fight back. Hanzo, unlike Widowmaker, is a more medium-range sniper, and at medium ranges, you excel, meaning you shouldn't have a problem taking out a Hanzo unless he lands a lucky headshot or scatter arrow. Some of you will disagree on this, but I think Soldier 76 is great against Mei. You should never let Mei get close enough to freeze you, and at medium/long ranges, there's nothing she can do to outdamage you. Also, if you're about to get frozen, quickly placing your biotic field will help you greatly in taking out a Mei. If you've done any damage to her before she froze you, you will easily be able to finish her off as she will not be able to kill you because you've placed your biotic field. Symmetra should be no problem. If you run into her turrets, you can place your biotic field or just shoot them all with your main weapon or your Helix rockets. If you come across her, at almost every range you will outdamage her. The only range she even stands a chance is up close, and even then you still beat her. I hesitated to put Tracer as a good matchup, but I honestly think she is. If she gets very close to you, you can quickly fire your Helix rockets at her feet, and it will most likely take out more than half of her health. After this, she will either be forced to recall, or you can finish her off with a few headshots with your high damage pulse rifle. Now, let's talk about the even matchups you'll encounter as Soldier 76, and be forewarned, there are a lot of them. In my opinion, the even matchups are Genji, Lucio, Torbjorn, Junkrat, Winston, Reaper, Soldier 76, D.Va, and McCree. Genji is kind of a coin flip for a few reasons. If the Genji lands a good deflect and you shoot him a few times, or you use your Helix rockets while he's deflecting, he will probably win the fight. However, if you're at a more medium to long range engagement, or he doesn't land a good deflect, I think you've got this one in the bag. Just try to bait out the deflect or shoot your Helix rockets at his feet, that way you can avoid them being deflected back at you. Because if he deflects the Helix rockets at you, there's no way you're going to win the fight. You've just taken out almost all of your HP. Oh, and one last tip. While Genji is deflecting, I recommend reloading your weapon or dropping your biotic field. Both will help you in the upcoming fight after his deflect wears off. Lucio isn't a threat to you because he can beat you in a 1v1, he's a threat to you because his move speed is very high and it's hard for you to take him out as a flanker. That being said, he isn't impossible to take out if you land a few good shots or one Helix rockets. You've usually got him in the bag and you can usually keep him in check. Torbjorn is an even matchup because taking out his turrets will require usually a Helix rockets or your biotic field, sometimes even both depending on where he's placed it. The problem here is Torbjorn will replace it and re-level it up to level 2 before your biotic field and your Helix rockets come off cooldown, which is why I think this fight is pretty even. With Junkrat, you kind of have to play a little mini game. If you dodge his frag grenades, you get the kill easily because of your strong mid to close range damage. And if you don't dodge them or you land in his trap, you are easily dead. So it's kind of a 50-50. If you're paying attention though, he shouldn't be too bad to take out. Winston, I've never personally had a problem with, but a good Winston will know when to use his barrier field and protect his whole team from things like your ultimate, your Helix rockets, and just your shots in general. In a 1v1, I think you've got him as long as he doesn't just kite you around his barrier. However, he can take you out if you're not paying attention, so I do think you should be aware of him. Reaper's a 50-50 because if you see him coming, there's almost no way he can take you out. You sprint way faster than he moves, so you can stay a safe distance away from him. However, if he comes up behind you or you round a corner or enter a small room where he is, he will take you out no problem. He can literally one-shot you if you're close enough to him, so make sure you're always keeping an eye out for the Reaper on the enemy team. D.Va can't beat you in a 1v1. I think you have her there because you can stay out of the range of her fusion cannons. However, she does counter you slightly with the use of her defense matrix. A well-timed defense matrix can block Helix rockets, your main shots, and can completely ruin one of your ultimates. McCree isn't a problem at medium and long ranges. However, at close ranges, he will destroy you just like basically any other hero in the game. If you can avoid his flashbang, you've got him. If you can't, you're dead. The last even matchup is other Soldier 76s. There's nothing I can really say that will make you always win these matchups given that you're playing the exact same hero. However, I can say the person who lands more headshots and or a Helix rockets on the other will usually end up winning the fight. Now let's talk about the bad matchups you'll encounter as Soldier 76. These matchups aren't impossible to win, however they will require a little bit more game sense and maybe a little bit more precision on your part to actually fight effectively. These are, in my opinion, Zarya, Bastion, Widowmaker, and Reinhardt. Zarya is an off-tank, and she can deal a lot of damage, so you should be really afraid of her when she's fully charged up. When she's not fully charged up, you can usually take the fight as long as you don't do one thing. Don't shoot her when her barrier is up. I know this is obvious, but what you really want to avoid is shooting your Helix rockets at her when the barrier is active. If you land Helix rockets on her while the barrier is active, you will be giving her a ton of charge. You give her 40 charge on her weapon, meaning she will deal 40% more damage to you, and all of that damage you would have put on her is now negated, meaning she will usually win the fight. At long ranges, you can usually take the Zarya. However, at close ranges, I recommend avoiding them if they're over 50% charge. You can tell based on their player model. And if they're not over 50% charge, make sure you don't shoot Helix rockets at them until you know their barrier is offline. Bastion is a counter to you, in my opinion, because in Sentry mode, he does everything you do, but better. If you encounter a Bastion in Sentry mode, you can try to get the drop on him, and you can try to shoot your Helix rockets on him, but he will probably still take you out due to his extremely high damage. I recommend only taking out Bastions if you're behind them, and you can hit the little blue spot on the back of his head, or you have the help of a teammate. Next up, we have Widowmaker. Some of you may wonder why I list Widowmaker as a counter to Soldier 76, where I don't list Hanzo. Well, Widowmaker is a much longer range sniper, so the odds of getting very close to her where you are most effective against her are very slim. She can use her Venom Mine and her grappling hook to get to places that you can't reach, and if you do manage to reach them, she can escape very quickly. At long ranges, you stand almost no chance against her. You have your sprint, which provides some good mobility, but you also move in a very predictable fashion, which makes you easy to land headshots on. The last counter to Soldier 76, in my opinion, is Reinhardt. Soldier 76 likes being on the front lines. Even though he can flank, he is usually found with his team pushing the objective or defending it. A good Reinhardt will prevent Soldier 76 from dealing any damage to the teammates behind him, and there's not much the Soldier 76 can do to get around that. His shield can also completely negate your tactical visor, so don't use it when he's paying attention and knows where you are. The best way I think you should be dealing with this counter to you is switching your playstyle up from flanking and pushing very frequently. If you're flanking, Reinhardts often get confused as to where they should be pointing their shield, because if you're behind them, they don't know if they should be turned around or facing the majority of your team. Before you go, I have one short section of the video left, and that is Soldier 76 synergies. In my opinion, there are two heroes that perform excellently when paired with Soldier 76, and these are Reinhardt and Lucio. If the enemy team doesn't have a Reinhardt plus Soldier 76 can completely wipe out the whole enemy team without even taking damage. It's a very powerful combo. Reinhardt's ability to shield Soldier 76 while he puts out solid damage at all ranges is invaluable and should not be underestimated. Lucio is very powerful right now, so I think he works well with a lot of heroes. However, I do think he works exceptionally well with Soldier 76. Lucio's heal speed on any individual target is somewhat low, so having Soldier 76 with his biotic field is extremely valuable to your team. Not only this, but I think Soldier 76 works extremely well when Lucio amps up his speed boost. You can use it at almost any time to become an extremely mobile damage dealer, and if you use it during your ultimate, you can be running around while using your tactical visor, taking out all of the enemy squishy heroes and getting past all of the enemy tanks. And now I'm out of breath. Thank you guys all for watching the video. If this helped you at all, be sure to leave a like down below and recommend it to any friends who would like to get better with Soldier 76. Before we go, I'd like to give a special thank you to Delvige Designs, I hope I said that right, because he made me a new channel banner and charged me absolutely nothing for it. So if you guys want to go support him, he's got a Twitter page and he's got his own website. I'll link those both in the description. Check him out if you're interested in having some artwork done for your personal YouTube channel. Other than that, leave any comments you'd like to say below. I take suggestions, comments, concerns, whatever you want to say, even if it's just get good, because that's your favorite phrase on the channel for some reason. I'd love to hear it. Be sure to leave that comment down below, and I will see you guys all later. Lone Hawk out.